Welcome everyone to our Discover IronCAD 2018 webinar. I am Kerry O'Connor. I am here at IronCAD as a product marketing manager. I've been with IronCAD for quite a long time, actually since the inception of IronCAD back in 1998. And today we're going to discuss some of the highlights in IronCAD 2018. So let's go ahead and get into the presentation, and what we will cover today are some of the key highlights of the recent release of IronCAD 2018, which include the graphical interaction performance improvements that we've made that make it available to handle large data sets much faster with your camera interactions, clicking, basically just your general usage of the product. And we'll demonstrate that in the product to show you an example of a model that's quite large and how this actually works to really speed up your overall productivity with large data sets inside of IronCAD. We'll also highlight some of the streamlined interfaces that we implemented in 2018, which includes a heads-up display for quick commands to allow you to quickly access all the common commands that you use in your design process, both in our 3D environment and our 2D environment. We'll next jump into our shrink wrap capabilities, which allows us to take large assemblies like the one shown here on the presentation and simplify them to be used or shared with suppliers or other people in your organization that may not need the full data sets and maybe a lighter model. For example, you may want to protect some of your IP of your model and not give that data out. You can shrink wrap that data up so that only the critical information, maybe overall size, some critical areas of the parts, may be sent out to your suppliers and your vendors or other users of the company. We'll next jump over into our bulk creation capabilities, which is one of our key things in 2018, which we believe is a game changer in the industry that actually speeds up the process from taking your 3D data into the 2D drawing environment, basically creating all your views and all your layouts and sheets and drawings for your model, and simply all you have to do is detail that process. So really streamlining the tedious task of creating drawing views and multiple sheets for all your files, your assembly files. And last but not least, we'll cover the 3D web viewer, which allows you to share all your data with anybody that has a web viewer. So that could be on any device, on any platform that has an open, WebGL supported browser that you can load and share your 3D models so they can visualize those models on any of those platform devices. So I didn't want to go into too much about the IronCAD today. We're just going to jump into the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll hop over to IronCAD and show you some of these key capabilities. And first, let's start off with the 3D performance capabilities and the graphical interaction. So what I have loaded up right now is basically one of our models that we've used quite often with IronCAD, which is about a 2,000 part, unique part model that we have here. And you notice the graphical performance is showing around 10 frames per second for this model. And the reason that it rotates about that speed is it basically has a lot of graphical capabilities to it. For example, you notice the transparency settings here. There's also some transparency inside of the model on some other components. You also have some reflection and highlight intensities on the model. So as engineers, we do like to make our models look pretty for the design. So we try to make it as visual as possible when we're working with the model. But this can also hinder your performance a little bit. So what we've added in 2018 is an option under our realistic settings that's found at the right click that goes to our dynamic mode, where you can actually load up a simplified model display of this part. So usually this takes about a minute for this file because it actually goes through and updates all the data that's in this file and then generates your new lightweighted model, your simplified model. So instead of waiting for that in the demonstration, I just went ahead and did that and loaded up another file right here called simplified that has the same model file. So as you can see, some things have changed with this, primarily like your transparency and some of the reflection capability on the inside have all kind of been more dulled out and removed. In this case, even on the interior part, you can see that it was removed as well. But you'll notice our performance is now rotating around 60 to 65 frames per second. And this is a really great improvement for large assembly files inside of here to really allow you to freely move around, zoom in. You notice it's pretty fluid here, and I'm just using a standard mouse on this model. And just one thing that we do want to note, that this doesn't limit any of the design capabilities. This still gives you access to the parts. If you click down to the part, you can access that, or even down to the feature level. If you load into these features, you notice you have all your feature data and still can model in this environment. So it's just basically giving you an alternate view to really work with your model at a much faster pace and giving you much more productivity in doing this. And one thing I did want to highlight is that I am on a laptop. I'm running Windows 10. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, it's a Dell Precision workstation, the M38 Dell Precision. It's got an i7 processor with 4 cores on it. And just for our graphics display, I believe it is under display here, we have an NVIDIA Quadro K1100M on this machine. So you can just kind of get an idea of what type of performance we're getting on a laptop. Of course, if you have a desktop with a higher end graphics card, you'll get a little bit better performance than this as well. But just wanted to give you that information up front inside of there. So that's a quick overview of that graphical performance. We don't need to spend a whole lot of time on that, but we did want to give you a highlight of how to turn that on and actually see some of those advantages. Just keep in mind, if you want to switch back, you just simply right click in the background, go to realistic, and then on your display dynamic mode settings, you can actually just turn that off and hit OK, and that will toggle that model back over for you. So that's an easy way to work with your models. Next, let me jump over into just a blank environment here. And some of you are new to IronCAD, and just starting with a big model on your on the demonstration here, it's kind of hard to get an idea of how IronCAD works. A lot of the things that we do in IronCAD really work with what we call our catalog browser, which is over here on our right-hand side, where you see things like blocks, cylinders, even starter shapes for spins, through cylinders, even into your tools, which could be things like holes, fasteners, gears, and even sheet metal. And we even actually have a nice getting started video tutorial library here that you can drag and drop out and watch a video on how to use IronCAD. But this is kind of our typical design process, where we start with these objects and we simply drag and drop them out into the environment, and then we click down to what we call our feature level, where we can push and pull and alter these designs. Just for those that are not familiar with IronCAD and are familiar with other design systems, I do want to kind of show you how you would actually use IronCAD as a traditional design process as well, where you could start with a 2D shape, which is up here on our ribbon bars, 2D shape or an extrude. But one of the new things that we did implement in 2018 is what we call this heads-up display that you kind of saw flicker there for a second. Here it is, popped up now. This is our heads-up display that when you click in the environment will display a lot of the common commands. You don't actually have to go up to the ribbon bar at the top or to toolbars or anything like that. You can actually access these commands and customize these to add all your preferences for what you do. For example, if we wanted to start an extrude, we can start the extrude command, and since nothing's in this scene, it automatically switches us right into a sketch mode, right into the XY orientation for us, as we would expect from other systems. So we can actually just now simply click in this environment. We would get our S key quick commands will pop up, our heads up display commands will pop up and give us all the relevant commands. For this case, it's in a sketch environment, so if we wanted to draw a rectangle, a center rectangle, we can just click and draw, type in the size that we want for that rectangle, and we have now completed our sketch there. We can simply right click and finish our drawing. And this puts us into our extrude command, and again, we're a visual command where we can just push and pull these handles, or we can type in exact values. For example, maybe we want this to be 1.25 for a height. We can hit OK to apply that. We can also use our handles afterwards by just clicking onto this, and you can see we have handles here. We can again adjust those extrude distances there. If we wanted to make that 0.75, for example, we have those handles there, so you don't have to go back to the feature commands. Just to continue on to this design, another thing that we do, so if we go to our catalog and work the way IronCAD typically works, we can drag out things like through hole cylinder. So if we drag and drop this out, you notice it drops a hole for us. It's automatically through our part for us. It actually gave us a size value here automatically that we can go ahead and type in a new value. Maybe we want it as 1/4 of an inch there. We can type that. And notice it put in new dimensions here for us. It referenced the closest edges. This is a nice new functionality that we added in 2018 to make it a little easier to position your geometry right away, where you can click on these individually and edit them, or you can right click and edit all smart dimensions. So if we wanted to make those both a 1/2 inch from each side, we just type in 1/2 inch, you hit apply to see that change, and OK, and that will update. So you can quickly position that. Now this heads up display, I do want to highlight that it is dynamic. So notice when I clicked on a part, it gives us a few various commands for that particular part. If I click down to the feature, it updates and gives us commands specific to that. So when we go into our customize, you can notice we have various ways to customize that for any type of selection state inside of IronCAD. You can also change how this is displayed. Right now it's displayed as a circular object. You can actually display it as a single static bar at the top or the bottom of the window so that it's always visible for you. Just makes you have to do a little bit more mouse movement to get to it, but it is a nice way to keep it out of your general viewing area or working area if you like to work in that mode. But let's go ahead and continue on. So in our S key here, so we've got our commands here. Let's go ahead and edit this sketch because maybe we forgot to add some fillets to this. So let's go ahead and select our sketch, bring up our command again. We have our fillet command here. We can simply just click on a corner, type in a radius value for that, hit OK, and again, we can just right-click finish that command out of there. So now we want to make duplicates of our hole. We can select down to our hole, and again, I clicked off that too quickly there. Our hole showed again our features or our commands that are useful for that feature, and one of those powerful tools is this triball, which is our positioning tool. Allows us to position an object or create new geometry. So in our case, we want to create holes at all corners of this part and one in the center. We can just right-click on our triball and say we want to create multiple. We want to create those at the center point or another point on the object. So we can simply click that. We can select, notice it gives us locations for the center point. We can click those points if we want, or if we hold the shift key, we can pick on the circular edge and it automatically will find that for us as well. And we can pick in the center point to dynamically create one there as well. Once these are created, what a link shape is in IronCAD, if you're not familiar with it, is actually all these objects are tied together. So if we go into modify one of these shapes, notice they all will change in size. That's not what we want. We basically just want this individual hole in the middle to be a little bit different. We can actually unlink that. Now if we change its size to say maybe we want to make that guy 1.25, he will change dynamically outside of that. So that's a nice addition to IronCAD to be able to do this capability with the triball. And again, our quick commands even go down to the edge or face selection. So notice when we select on an edge, we have commands that are common to that. For example, blending kind of commands that you would want to use, or chamfer commands. If we select that, we can actually automatically type in a chamfer value and maybe select another edge to create that as well, and simply right-click, hit OK to apply that. So this is just a quick demonstration of that heads-up display quick commands that can be fully customizable in the 3D, but that allows you to work basically in the environment where you're at or where your cursor is at, instead of working up on our standard ribbon bar command list that you can see at the top that I'm scrolling through right now, or using toolbar UIs, which you can also use in IronCAD. This will also highlight it in the drawing here a little bit later. I'll kind of show you both environments as we continue going forward. Okay, so now let's move over into another area of IronCAD, which is the shrink wrap capability. And I've loaded up another model, and this one's quite large. I think this one is about 4,000 to 5,000 parts inside of here. In this case, what we're trying to show with the shrink wrap capability is basically take this type of design and simplify it for usage with other people in your organization or shared partners that may be using your geometry for other things. For example, in this case, this model is going to be used to be in a layout or a production layout. So really the user that needs to have this data just needs to have specific information. For example, they might need the feet or the base of this part and the holes, so they know where to mount that. They may need to know this height requirement and some other geometry that's going to go underneath this part here. We may want to highlight that area as well. But we don't really need anything else in this model because it doesn't concern the designer for laying out this as a production layout. If we look at this model in total is about 30 megabytes in size. So it's not easy to share this around, and especially if you're sending it to outside vendors, it's a large file to send around. You would have to use some sort of Dropbox or some sort of sharing device to get that around. And of course, all your IP would go out if we send it this way. So how the shrink wrapping tool works, before I get into that, I do want to highlight all the information that's inside of this. You can see there's quite a lot of holes inside of this geometry as well. Inside of here, these little bitty holes, you see other geometry underneath. That's including some gears inside of here and other components that really are not needed, and bolts and fasteners, things like that that don't need to go out. So how the shrink wrap command works, let me go over to our tools ribbon bar. You can also add this to the quick command if you like, but in our case it's under the tools command. It's called the command shrink wrap. If you select on that, it gives you quite a few options here to define how you want to simplify your model. You can actually have specific parts you want to keep, parts you may want to specifically remove. You can remove parts by a certain percentage, or you can turn off that percentage, and by size, exact size values, anything that's, say, smaller than a certain size will be removed. You can patch holes. You can do all the holes in the part, or you can base it on a range. So like a size range, for example, holes, anything smaller than a certain size will be hidden. And we'll show some of the other capabilities as well as removing invisible parts. For example, in this case, this guy has some components inside of a box. You can see I have a transparent cover on there. We have all these components inside of there, including this belt system that we don't want anybody to see. We can actually remove the invisible parts. So let's go ahead and start off and say, well, we need to keep these outside base parts. So we'll just select those components over here. And sorry for the scrolling, it's a little slow on GoToMeeting, but I'll just try to keep my scrolling down to a minimum. We'll also select this top part for our height requirement and our individual little pieces here. Say something's going to go into those slots there. We'll keep those selected as things that we need to keep. And some parts we want to remove, for example, in this case, maybe we're not finished with this assembly up front, or we may not want to show some of these design components in this part. We can select by a part or by assembly. If you go down to our bottom right-hand side, you'll see a selection filter where we can change from part to an assembly in part. If we select that guy here, you'll notice it'll come up and say, do you want to highlight this whole assembly or various assemblies here? We want to hide that entire assembly. We can close that. We also want to hide this other part up front, which is actually another assembly. So we can slide that collar and hide that as well. So we can add that to our list and close that. We can see those are added. We'll also go ahead and say, let's just remove anything that's smaller than, say, 400 millimeters inside of this file. And then we can go into any other options that we have here, which gives us one other option that I haven't mentioned yet, which is combined into a single or one part file. So I'm going to show you both options here on the result of what a one part file result is and what a multi-part file is. And in this case, this model takes about 2 minutes to process. So again, I'm not going to run that during the demonstration. I'll just show you the final results. In doing so, I also want to show you this is the full structure. You can see it's quite large, and these are assembly structures inside of here that have quite a bit of information inside of it. Now, if you run the shrink wrap tool and you do a single part, this is what you will end up with those settings that we ran. Notice it's a single element in the tree on the left-hand side. And you'll notice all the parts that we told it to keep. For example, these base plates are here with the holes on both sides. And also our top part with its holes are remained, and all these little slot pieces are as well. Everything else in this model is removed. Notice all the holes that were in these sheet metal parts on the top and bottom are filled automatically. All of our gears that were smaller than 400 millimeters are gone. So basically a really lightweight, simplified model. And just to show how you can share this model, you could actually export this model just by right-clicking on it, and you can export it through the process here. I don't have it in my menu, but you can add that to your menu to export it, or click on your file menu exporter at the top. There's an export command here as well that you can export this file into various formats, ACES, Parasolid, IGSTEP, some CATIA file formats as you can export that out, as well as graphical file formats. You can also share this ICS file with anybody that has IronCAD data. So that's our file format. You can share that with them and they can open this. And one thing it does by default, which is really nice, is it's not editable. So if you try to drop geometry on this, it won't actually apply it because it's not an editable object. However, since you are in IronCAD, you can actually tell it to convert it to an editable part. And what you'll see is our tree changed over here to look like an IronCAD part file. And then now you can actually edit this and add features to it if you like. So for example, maybe we want to actually section this guy to make sure that that data was removed on the interior part. We can just run a section plane here. We'll just do an XY section. We'll place it right here so we can see the geometry. Let's reverse the cutting orientation. Hit OK. And you'll notice that it'll go ahead and cut that part. And you see all those parts on the inside are removed that we told it to remove. The invisible or internal voids of the geometry are removed. So this is a nice way to export this. Now the benefit of this again is it is a single geometry element for IronCAD files. However, it's not necessarily the smallest file. In this case, this file went from 30 megs to this file, which is just under 1 megabyte in file size. So great reduction in file size. But even if you use a multiple part shrink wrap, you can see that it actually has a lot more tree information inside of here, quite a few objects in the tree. But the advantage to this are two things. One, it tries to maintain some of your colors. So notice the transparency on this object is maintained. All the kind of color schemes for some of the parts are remained. For the parts that are not removed, it tries to keep those color parts available for you. Also, it keeps our reference shapes. So for example, notice these little icons on some of these shapes. What that means is these are actually linked objects. So notice these plates, all these plates are the same, they're linked. So it only stores one data of information. The advantage of this is it makes a file size smaller. So this model looks almost identical, just a little bit more visual qualities, and the tree is a little more expanded, but the file size for this is just a 0.5 meg. So it actually got smaller in this case if you have a lot of external or internal link references of your geometry. So a very nice addition. So the shrink wrap capability was introduced in 2018, and we're going to continue to enhance on that in our 2018 product update 1 release this year, and also in our 2019 release, to give a lot more functionality to this and more capabilities to even give it much more powerful going forward. So that's a really nice addition to our release, and I just wanted to highlight that for you. So let's go back over to our model. Now let's step into the bulk creation capability, is how we take our model into the 2D drawing environment, so the 3D to 2D transition. So we have an assembly inside of this model, which is basically this support system we have going on here. I'm just going to go ahead and open that part by itself so we can kind of get a better visual idea of what this part is. And basically we have a couple sheet metal parts and some other objects inside of here that if we click down to these parts, you can see that we can actually unfold this and see the unfolded flat pattern for this object, and we can get back to the folded flat pattern as well. And this is a sheet metal part as well. And what we want to do is actually take this into the drawing. So we want to have a single drawing basically, and a couple sheets to put these on, and a bill of material on these. So the way the bulk creation tool works is you can define or predefine templates with various information on them, whether they're title block information, BOM displays for your tables, views, single view, multiple views, also views that have 3D views and flattened views for sheet metal. And how the bulk creation is invoked is you scroll over to your Home tab at the top, and you'll see a bulk creation command. If you click that, it'll bring up this dialog and basically gives you the full power of how you can define all of your drawings and your templates that you're going to create. For example, for the entire file, if we click on this, you'll see it gives us a preview down here for our file. This is our scene file. We're going to go ahead and create a new drawing for that. We can add a sheet label if we want. In this case, we're going to call this guy as our brace support. And we can actually select what template we want to use. So I've created some templates on my own. So I have a BOM template that I want to use, which has a single view on it and just the BOM. So we'll use that one for our main file. Our clamp mount, which is just one of these little brackets here or the clamps on the side. If we click on it, you can see a preview of it. We're going to add a sheet for that and call that the clamp mount. And in this case, we want to have a BOM, but we also want to have 4 views because we're going to actually have to section this guy to get to some of the parts on the inside. So we want to have some additional views for that. We'll go ahead and create that one. And we'll scroll down and create one for both of our sheet metal parts, which is just this brace and the mount. And notice both of these files are a little different in size. So I have 2 different templates for these. One, I have a sheet metal template that has a scale 1:4 view layout for that, for the bigger file. And for the small one, I'll just go ahead and use a 1:1 scale for that one. So again, you can create your own templates here or use any of the ones that we have, which are located over here on the right. If you click over to the right, you'll see view templates libraries that has ANSI and ISO templates that you can use that have different sizes that you can use inside of IronCAD. So these are shipped with IronCAD, but you can customize and build your own to your liking. So in our case, we have a few that we're using right now. We're going to use this 1:1. Oops, sorry, I forgot to pick that. 1:1 inside of there, and give these a label as well. So this is going to be our brace, and this is going to be our brace support. I'll call it mount inside of here. And all we have to do is hit OK. And you'll see the process run through here live as it goes through. It's actually going to open up the drawings, create the views for us, update the bill of material, create all of our templates for us. These are creating the updated views for this file. And we are seeing everything updated. So you notice at the end of the result, we see our templates all had text information that automatically pulled from the 3D file and pulled in information, basically the naming information for it. Created our views. This is a 4 view plus an unfolded view inside of the file. We also have one for our brace. And notice any of these views are real live, so we can actually click and move these if we want to drag them around or readjust them after the fact, and can also include shaded views inside of here. We have our clamp mount. And we also have our brace support. Let me zoom that up a little bit. And you can see that. So notice all our tabs were named for us for this drawing. All of our BOM information was pulled in automatically for us, and our view was created. So this speeds up the entire drawing process, because typically, in a typical CAD system, you would go new drawing, click your 4 views, place those, create BOM, place your BOM, update your template information. Then you would add a new sheet, go new sheet, and repeat the process for all those files. So you can imagine if you have an assembly or a large assembly, how tedious that gets after you go through the process, day to day, every day, creating your drawings or your detailed manufacturing drawings. this can drastically speed up that process by just laying out everything for you. And then all you have to do is go into your files and start doing your detailing. So for example, if we wanted to go into this particular clamp mount and actually do our item bubbles, we can click on our background again. We get our heads-up display. We can see item bubbles listed there. We can go ahead and place our item bubbles for this part, and it highlights our parts as we go through and do this. And we know there's an internal part on this guy. So again, we can click on our view. We can go ahead and see our section views labeled in our heads-up display. We'll change our orientation inside of here. Go ahead and apply our section view inside of there, and we can alter all the results for that. But again, we'll go ahead and click out here, add our item bubble, select on our interior part to get our fourth part laid out inside of there. So very easy to work with the quick access in the general sheet layout. We can also use it on our detailing process. So when you click on a view, for example, let's just move this over a little bit. And if we click on our view, we can see other commands for detailing or dimensioning the file. So in this case, we'll just go ahead and do smart dimensioning, where we can click 2 points, place our dimension where we like. We can click another area on here. Say we place a dimension there. For our small dimension, we can create one for a point here. We can tab that over to get whichever one we want and place it. Another nice enhancement that was done in 2018 was the ability was, while you're in the dimensioning command, you can see I'm still in the dimensioning command. I can right click on any dimension and change settings on it while I'm still in that command. So say we can flip these arrows to be an inside-outside dimension, and then I can continue to go ahead and dimension our file as we're going along there. So just makes it a little easier for us to continue to add dimensions, and we can go from view to view if we need to place dimensions. For example, we can place this overall dimension here as well on this view. So one nice thing about the whole S key is it is dynamic. Again, it can work on the view information, your text information, can show options for that. Your dimensions can have an S key on it as well for deleting it, accessing the dimension properties. All that is available to that dynamic heads-up display. So a very nice little tool used both in the 3D and 2D drawing environment. One other thing I wanted to highlight about the drawing is we did add a new drawing view capability for alternate position views, which this really comes in for mechanisms. So for example, I have a model here that has a few configuration states. This is our state 1, which is just I guess the fully pulled back state of this model. If we change our state to state 3, you'll see our model update to show you the fully extended version of this mechanism. So you can see there's another state in here, state 2, which is a different configuration of that. So in IronCAD, you can create various configurations of predefined views or position views of your models or mechanisms. And now you can actually create drawings. Again, by hitting your S key or having it clicking in the background, you can access the new drawing template there. Click that. That'll bring you into your standard view creation. Again, pick your views that you want to create. Hit OK. And let's just size that up a little bit. Place our view, move these around a little bit. Again, our heads-up display, we can access things like shaded drawing views inside of here or other commands. In this case, I have the alternate view on the right click, where we can say alternate position view. Selecting that gives us a command ribbon on our left-hand side that allows us to add different views to be overlaid on the view. So in our case, maybe we want to add that state 2, and we want to add that state 2 maybe with dot lines, and since it's not fully extended, let's make it really light so we don't confuse it with the fully extended state. So then we'll go ahead and add our state 3, which is our fully extended state. Again, we'll keep it as a dot in our case and make it red so we can actually see that state and hit OK. So what you'll see is it'll actually overlay those 3 states inside of there so we can see our original state, our state 2, and our fully extended state as an alternate position view inside of here. And not only can you see this information, you can actually dimension to it as well. So if we come over to our part, we can actually access the geometry information to the highlights of each one of these parts. So I'm holding the shift key down my command, and for my case here, I'm going to go to center of this guy and just place this overall dimension from the extended value and place that dimension out in the drawing there. So you can see that you can dimension between these views. For your alternate view, maybe you would want to add another one for the height as well to show some of that transitional movement of that positional view. So just one of the key things that we did want to highlight as part of the drawing environment improvements in 2018. Okay, so last but not least, I do want to go into our 3D web viewer. And what our 3D web viewer is, it's basically allowing you to take any one of your 3D models and allowing it to be viewed on any WebGL-based web platform, which is most of the standard viewers like Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer all have those nowadays. So in this case, I have a model, a 3D model, and I'll just rotate it around a little bit so you can kind of get an idea of what this has inside. You know, it's not a whole lot of complexity to this model, but it's a good one just to show for this process. How you actually get this data shared on our web platform is basically we go up into our add-ins and we have this new one called IC Web Viewer. All you do is select on the generate, and it gives you a little bit of information on how this command works and what it's going to do. And one of the nice options that we have is you can export a mobile-friendly, low-data version. What this is useful for is if you're going to bring it on to it, if you know you're going to put this on a server platform, for example, and have someone access it on an iPad or a phone, for example, you want to use this one because your phones only have a certain amount of data memory that it can load. So 3D graphics gets pretty heavy when you get a lot of graphical information inside of there. So you do want to use that if you're going to generate a mobile-friendly one for a phone or iPad, for example. And simply click the command, and what it will do is actually go through and process all your data and generate a zip file of all the 3D viewable file. In our case, we have this crankshaft zip that we're going to save. I have another file here as well as a machine. It's a little bit larger file, but we can, that's on a different case. But this is the crankshaft that I'm saving out for this file. And it saves it out as about a 1.6 meg file for this. And since I already have it saved, I don't need to run that right now. We already have that saved. And then it will give you two options. One is a local file deployment and a server deployment. So local file, and what that will do is actually create a general web viewer for you that you can launch it up in a browser within your own internal network that can access all your local drives or shared drives inside of your network. So you can basically have multiple zips like that machine, the file that I mentioned, or the crankshaft here that we have, and you can open that into that viewer as just a standard viewer opening multiple files. That's what the local file allows you to do. The server deployment creates a HTML file that's named the same as your zip file, that you need to put both of those files onto a server platform like your website, for example. Just move those onto your website and give someone the address, and they can actually dynamically open up those files. And that's what I'm going to show you today, is this server deployment file. So let me go ahead and close this, and I'll open up our browser that we have this file opened up here. Let's see. There we go. Okay, and this is our path. So I placed this file actually up on our IronCAD.com site under a test folder, and the crankshaft HTML file is the one labeled as the same name as the zip file. We type in that path and hit enter. It'll load the viewer for you, and then just give you an option of what the quality is that you want to see this model. So we're going to go ahead and say load the high quality model, and you'll see it loaded dynamically here for us on the browser. So nothing gets loaded on your computer. It's dynamically in the browser. So all you need is a browser, no add-ins, nothing gets installed, dynamically loads this file up. Then you simply can just left click to rotate it around, use your scroll wheel to zoom in and zoom out. You notice there's some edges here. It's not quite as the high quality as you would find in IronCAD, since we did a low data version. When if you do a high data version, it'll be a little bit better or cleaner on that. But you can visually inspect this model inside of here. And not only can you inspect and visually, you also have a tree that you can expand and see the data. If you want to allow people that access, they can see the tree information inside of here. And you notice there's little I-beams over here. So if you click on one of these, it highlights what it's showing. This is the internal, or actually the external thread here on this. If we click on the I-beam, or the little I, notice it hides or shows those items. You can quickly hide and see and inspect inside of there. If you click on it again, it'll deselect that. You can do the same thing on the 3D side as well. If you double click, you can highlight an object and right click to hide selected, show all, hide all. That's the same commands you would find in IronCAD actually. If you right click, you'll see these same commands inside of IronCAD. But if you hide the selected, you can actually see that part gets hidden. We can see inside that file as well. And you can do other things inside of here. You can actually change your viewing state with standard window commands by clicking on this icon here. You can do sectioning as well. If you turn on a section plane, you can see the section planes visually shown here. Move this plane in. It will update the section there. If I get that to move, there you go. You can see that it's actually sectioning that geometry. You can turn off the plane and just see the section geometry. You can also reverse the orientation. Click on it again to turn it off. And you can turn on an X, Y, and Z plane all at the same time as well, if you like. You can change your view orientations to standard views like your top, front, right inside of here, or your isometric views. You can turn off edges if you don't want to see the edges to get a little bit better visual appearance of the model. And you also can change the background if you want to get like a white background, make it a little bit easier on the eye. You can change that as well. So this is a very rough idea of how this web platform can be used. It'll be extended going forward in our products to be used for more things like our catalogs. We'll be moving into this as part of our product portfolio. You'll see a lot more power for that. An example of this running in a web viewer, or sorry, on a mobile or a platform like the iPad. This is an iPad display of the model. And in this case, maybe we want to just load the low quality. You'll see this load up, and notice you can just use the iPad standard commands inside of here to visually rotate this. And notice when you use the low quality or the low data version, there's no tree data, so it doesn't give you that information. It's very secure in this sense, so you can maintain your IP. And notice it also lowers the quality. You'll see a lot of faceted edges in here, so people can't get a hold of this data and actually use it for anything. It's really a faceted model, and there's not actually any way to export or anything, so it's really secure IP data. A nice way to visualize it on a phone or an iPad, and you have a little bit of the same similar commands down here at the bottom for your selection states and your section planes and things like that that people can use. So it gives you a rough idea how this can be used on a web or mobile platform, as well as your standard browser platform inside of your desktop or Mac, for example. Okay, so now let's jump back to IronCAD. So that kind of gives you an overview of the key topics I wanted to cover today in 2018. So let me hop back over to our presentation and just kind of recap some of the things that we've shown today. One of the big things that we did highlight is the better performance with working with large data sets. Again, anybody that starts using IronCAD and really taking the full advantages of it, we have customers have tens of thousands of parts. With this new option, drastically can improve your rendering performance when you rotate, zoom in, zoom out, and actually working with that data set selection and things like that. So it's really nice improvement with those large data sets. We also improved the general workflow of IronCAD of creating geometry and just general working while using the heads up quick commands that you saw dynamically pop up as I'm clicking and working with the model. And that's available both on the 3D and the 2D environment, so you can take advantage of that in both areas. We also showed the shrink wrap capability where we can share your designs while protecting all your IP based on what information you want to give out to the users, and share that with any design system using standard solid or surface formats that they can give out to them, so they can actually reuse it in any CAD system to work around the geometry, place it in for layout, for example, or do some interrogation data with that. We also introduced the bulk creation for IronCAD 2018, which is in our case, a game changer, what we call it, because it can drastically reduce the whole detailing process. So where we saw a lot of time spent on the detailing from all of our customers, we wanted to drastically speed that up by just allowing them to take out some of the tedious tasks up front by laying out your views dynamically, automatically for you with all your various automatic part numbering information populated for you, and all you have to do is detail. And using the heads up command, you can even make that process even faster. And last but not least, we showed the web platform, which is our 3D web viewer using WebGL, that you can share your secure data on any device, on any platform, just using a standard web browser with nothing being downloaded. We did want to make some resources available for you, which we'll actually send you a follow-up email here a little bit later today that will also contain these links for you, which are locations. If you haven't downloaded IronCAD and want to give it a try, you can go to our download, or www.ironcad.com/download to try our product. You can also check out our What's New on our blog. That gives you a little bit more detail of some of the things I covered today, plus additional information that I didn't cover that may be interesting to you as well. And always, if you take a look at our blog or sign up for our newsletter, you'll be a part of our blog information that shows all the highlights that come out. For example, we'll have a service pack coming out for 2018 later this week, so you'll be updated when that comes out just by being signed up for our blog or our newsletter. And then if you need any questions, feel free to contact our support. There's a form there, or you can contact us directly on the phone, and we can help you, or even access our local resellers in your territory to help you out as well for any questions. So last but not least, I'll go and take a look at any questions to see if there's anything that we need to address here before we shut down the webinar. Some questions that were asked. One was when we were showing the graphical performance, they were asking how did you access the frames per second box that was showing the speed of the product. That is actually found when you right click in the background of IronCAD and go into the display settings where we turned on the simplified model. It's right above that, it's just a checkbox. Select that and it'll actually appear for you, and you can move that around to wherever you want on the screen just to get an idea of your speed. It's another question said a lot of people like the look of our heads-up display, our quick access commands, but they wanted to know if there's any options to turn it off by default. Yes, you can turn that up. That when IronCAD installs, it's on by default, but you can go to the customize command, which is the very middle icon at the very top. You click on that, and there's various settings at the bottom that I showed during the presentation that you can turn off the display of that command and only access it when you hit the S key, or you can customize that S key to be any key you want. But by default, it's the S key. You can click that to when you want it to appear, and it never appears in your interface if you don't want it to. And you can also display it at the top or the bottom of the interface to always be there, but just out of your working area. One other question that was asked inside of here, let's see. Do we have any online video demonstrations, this functionality? As I mentioned, if you go to our blog on our What's New or the Tech Updates blog, you'll see all of our What's New sections for our current 2018 release and all our past released demonstrations, and usually there are videos in there for most of the functionality I discovered or displayed today, but there's some additional ones there as well. And as always, any one of us here at IronCAD or one of our local resellers would be happy to show you those individually if you just like to give us a contact. One person did kind of highlight the frame per second speed didn't actually really show too well on the GoToMeeting. That is because it is actually trying to live record and stream that data over the webinar. So sorry if that didn't come through as to the dynamically improvement there. It has actually went from a 10 to 60 frames per second there, so it is quite noticeable here on my machine, but maybe not so much on the streaming side. We do have people around the world, so it does stream a little slower in some areas, so sorry I didn't mention that up front. And last but not least, one other question was, does the multi-sheet or bulk creation tool work with our draft environment, which is another drawing environment which uses 2D, which is more of a standard mechanical 2D application where you can draw everything in 2D or load in AutoCAD, DWG, DXF files. That environment, does it work in that area right now? No, but we are looking to add that in there as well so that we can take advantage of it in both areas. We have users using both our current drawing environment and our draft environment, so we like to improve those performances in both areas. So just want to give everyone a head up. Alrighty, so I think that's all the questions that we had here that were coming up on our question list. If you have any other questions, I'll give you a second. If you want to type in any other questions here, I'll answer those real quick. If not, I would like to thank everybody for sitting through our webinar with us today, and hopefully it brought some highlights to the IronCAD 2018 for you, and maybe you want to take a closer look at this. Again, we're happy to assist you in your trial period, or if you want to evaluate it with a reseller on hand, just give us contact and we'll help you out. And it looks like we have no other questions, so thank you and have a great day, everyone.